The moon, a pale sliver in the inky sky, offered scant illumination as Antigone navigated the battlefield. The stench of death, a cloying miasma that clung to the back of her throat, was the only constant companion on this desolate journey. With each step, the weight of her defiance pressed down on her, a physical manifestation of the rebellion brewing in her soul. Reaching a hillock, she scanned the grisly tapestry of carnage below. Bloated corpses, some barely recognizable, lay sprawled like discarded dolls, testament to the war's brutality. Suddenly, a flicker of movement in the distance caught her eye. Her heart hammered a frantic rhythm against her ribs. Was it a scavenger, perhaps a hyena drawn by the macabre feast? Or worse, a Theban patrol, their loyalty to Creon unwavering? Holding her breath, Antigone crouched low, her senses straining to identify the source of the movement. As she inched closer, the moonlight briefly illuminated a lone figure hunched over a fallen warrior. A surge of hope ignited within her. Could it be a grieving mother, a sister seeking solace beside her fallen brother? But as she drew near, the figure straightened, revealing the unmistakable silhouette of a Theban guard. Panic clawed at her throat, a cold hand gripping her lungs. She had been careless, her cloak failing to completely obscure her form in the moonlight. The guard turned, his head swiveling like a startled hawk. In the flickering moonlight, his eyes locked with hers. For a heartbeat, time seemed to stand still, the air thick with unspoken tension. Then, a guttural growl escaped the guard's throat. "Who's there?" he bellowed, his voice echoing across the battlefield. Adrenaline surged through Antigone's veins. There was no time for hesitation. With a desperate cry, she lunged forward, a phantom streaking across the battlefield. The guard, caught off guard, stumbled in pursuit. The sound of pounding feet and ragged breaths became the soundtrack to her desperate escape. She weaved through the labyrinth of bodies, her sandals slipping in the blood-soaked earth. The guard's heavy footsteps behind her were a relentless drumbeat, urging her forward. Thorns ripped at her clothes, branches clawed at her face, but she dared not slow her pace. Just when her lungs felt like they were about to burst, Antigone spotted a dense thicket of trees looming in the distance. A beacon of hope flickered in her chest. If she could reach the thicket, the dense foliage would offer some semblance of cover. With a final burst of energy, she plunged into the darkness of the trees. The pounding of her pursuer seemed to fade as the branches closed in around her. But she wasn't safe yet. Holding her breath, she pressed herself against the rough bark of a gnarled oak, straining to hear any sound that might betray her location. The silence was a living thing, pressing down on her with a suffocating weight. Minutes bled into an eternity. Had she lost him? Or was he waiting out there, his senses attuned to any rustle in the leaves? Fear, a cold serpent, coiled around her heart, threatening to squeeze the life out of her. Then, a faint sound pierced the silence, a low growl followed by the murmur of voices. Her breath hitched in her throat. Were there more guards? Had they surrounded the thicket? Or was this something else entirely? With a surge of morbid curiosity, Antigone inched closer, her movements as silent as a shadow. Pushing aside a curtain of leaves, she peered out into a hidden clearing. The sight that greeted her sent a jolt of terror through her veins. A circle of cloaked figures huddled around a flickering fire, their faces obscured by hoods pulled low. The air crackled with a strange energy, and a low chanting, punctuated by rhythmic drumming, filled the clearing. This wasn't a patrol. This was something far more sinister, a gathering of necromancers, those who dabbled in the forbidden arts, who sought to bend the will of the dead to their purposes. Antigone froze, a chilling realization dawning on her. In her blind flight from the guard, she had stumbled into the heart of a forbidden ritual. Fear threatened to paralyze her, but the image of Polonices left to rot on the battlefield fueled her resolve. She had to finish what she started, honor her brother, before the city succumbed to a darkness far worse than Creon's tyranny. Taking a deep, shaky breath, Antigone began to inch back, desperate to slip away unseen. But a twig snapped beneath her foot, the sound echoing through the stillness like a thunderclap. The chanting abruptly ceased, replaced by a chorus of gasps. All heads swiveled towards the source of the noise, their eyes glowing with an unnatural light in the firelight. Antigone stood exposed, bathed in the harsh glow of the fire. The air crackled with raw power, and the stench of death intensified, a tangible presence filling the clearing. The lead figure, a man with a skeletal face and eyes like burning embers, stepped forward. His voice, a rasping whisper, sent shivers down Antigone's spine. "Who dares intrude upon our right?" he hissed, the words slithering like poisonous snakes. Antigone, her voice surprisingly steady, declared, "I am Antigone, daughter of Oedipus, sister of Polynices. I seek nothing from you, but passage through this clearing." The necromancer studied her with an intensity that made her skin crawl. "Your name carries a heavy burden, child," he said finally, "and your presence coincides well with our purpose. Tell me, Antigone, are you willing to pay the price to honor your brother?" Antigone's brow furrowed in confusion. What price could be higher than the one she was already facing defiance of the king, a possible death sentence? But before she could answer, a blood-curdling scream pierced the night. The guard who had been pursuing her stumbled into the clearing, his face pale with terror, a deep gash across his chest. They are here," he gasped, collapsing at the feet of the necromancer. "The spirits, they are angry." The scene before her devolved into chaos. The guard's words seemed to have disrupted the ritual. Glowing figures materialized from the shadows, their forms wispy yet menacing. The necromancers, caught off guard, scrambled to defend themselves. The air crackled with eldritch energy as bolts of spectral lightning lanced through the clearing. Antigone, caught in the maelstrom, found herself in a fight for survival she hadn't anticipated. A ghostly figure, its face a mask of rage, lunged towards her. With a desperate cry, she dodged, the spectral form passing through her like a cold wind. Using the confusion, she sprinted towards the far edge of the clearing, the sounds of the battle fading behind her. Bursting through the trees, she stumbled back onto the battlefield. Dawn was breaking, casting the horizon in a pale red glow. The sight that greeted her filled her with a fresh wave of despair. The Theban guards, alerted by the disturbance, had arrived at the clearing. The necromancers lay dead, their bodies contorted in a grotesque tableau. And amidst them, his face serene in death, lay Polynices. The guard who had pursued her, his fear replaced by a look of grim determination, stood guard over the body. The battle, however horrifying, had served a purpose. It had delayed the patrol long enough for her to complete her sacred duty. Grief gnawed at her heart, but a sense of accomplishment, a bittersweet victory, mingled with the pain. She had defied Creon, honored her brother, and stumbled upon a terrifying secret brewing within Thebes. But what was the true price she had paid? The encounter with the necromancers, their disturbing words about a payment, left a chilling premonition hanging in the air. Had she unleashed an even greater darkness by interrupting their ritual? As the sun rose higher, casting its light on the carnage of the battlefield, Antigone knew this was just the beginning. She had defied a king, but a far more sinister force, one that manipulated the dead and whispered promises of power, now lurked in the shadows. The fight for Thebes, for her own soul, had only just begun,